Hello, welcome to Intuitive Insights. I am your host, Megan McDonough. I am a yoga instructor, I'm an intuitive guide, and an artist. And I am here to share some insight, some inspiration, some intuitive messages that hopefully you can use for you. My hope is that they resonate and help facilitate you on your spiritual path. This week we are talking with Laura Hammock. She's a dear friend that I've known for a while. She's massively intuitive, and she's going to share some insights on her certification, which is emotional coding. This is something that's super new to me, but maybe not to you. But she's going to explore it a little bit, talk about it a little bit, what it is, how she got into it, and then how she uses her intuitive skills and her intuition with it. All right, I have Laura Hammock, who is a good friend here with me today. She is a massively just like a force with her intuition, but also a certified. She's certified in emotional coding. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what that is and explore it with her and how her intuition plays a part in what she does. Welcome, Laura. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Megan. Excited to be here.
Yes. So talk to me. This is one of the first, I feel like I know a lot of spiritual woo-woo things, alternate forms of healing, but I'm always learning new ones. So emotional coding, I know very little about. So can you give us a little explanation as to what it is?
Yes. And I'm going to back up a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I have been going to therapy since I was 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I did talk therapy, which was not helpful. I did EMDR for a period of time, more helpful. I have done psychotherapy, more helpful. But nothing was like, I know what my issues are, but nothing was taking away the emotional charge of issues that have happened over my life that just continue to plague me. So in January, I went and had my first emotion code session done, and it was life-changing. So I went to see a practitioner local in Denver, and we released buckets and buckets and buckets of trapped grief. And grief is an emotion that lives in your lungs. And I have had lung issues. I thought since I was 5, my mom actually said since I was 2. So
That's
I meet with this,
interesting.
so I meet with this practitioner, and I was releasing my grief from different traumas in my life, also releasing inherited grief from my father, which we'll talk about inherited emotions. But I leave the session and I literally get pneumonia, which is kind of ironic because, as I said, grief lives in your lungs. So I was sicker than I have been in eons, but I've always had lung issues. And so releasing all this grief, it was no surprise that I also had this physical reaction to letting go of grief that I'd been storing since literally conception. So as I was sitting home for a week recovering from pneumonia, I just had this feeling that I had to know more about this emotion coding. So I got the book. Funny enough, I already had the book. I had read the book years ago, probably got recommended by my psychotherapist, was interested, but never did anything more with it. So I pick up the book, I read the book again for the second time, just know that this is what I need to do. Signed up to go through the training and become a certified emotion code practitioner, which I have done. And now I'm working with paid clients on a daily basis, which is an amazing opportunity for me, and going on to the next level of training. So It really has been life-changing. So what body coding does is when things happen in our life that are traumatic or I guess a negative impact, have a negative impact,
Yeah.
our bodies store those trapped emotions. So, no emotion is bad, but we're really focusing on the darker emotions, I guess is the best way to put it.
Maybe
And so,
heavier, like denser
heavier.
emotions. Is that what you mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. So, like vibrationally,
Yeah.
joy and peace and harmony are going to be on the lighter side, and grief, depression, sorrow are going to be on the heavier side, as you said.
Yeah.
Anywho, when something happens in our life and we either A, don't have the capacity to process the emotion at the time because A, we're too young and we don't know how to process it, B, we're too tired and don't want to process it, C, we're too emotionally charged that we just can't deal with it. So it literally gets stored in our body. And they're like the size of your fist and they can be stored anywhere in your body. And that emotion lives there until you actually release it. So basically, through emotion coding, I use muscle testing with my clients to identify the trapped emotions, identify when it got trapped, get permission to release it, release the emotion, which happens like in real time at the time of the session. And I use a magnet, which so your governing meridian runs all the way up your spine, over your head, over your nose to your top lip. So I run a magnet, and you can run a magnet anywhere on your governing meridian, but I run a magnet from my hairline, like at the top of my head, to the
Yeah.
base of my head. And so with just regular emotions, we swipe the magnet 3 times to release it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
With inherited emotions, which are things that we get from our parents, grandparents, this can go back generations, we
Yeah.
swipe the magnet 10 times.
Okay.
So it's been very freeing. And just talking about inherited emotions, like I said, one of the emotions I released in my first session was grief, which was my dad's grief. So it wasn't even mine. And
Mm.
when you
Mm.
have an inherited emotion, it imprints on the person, the child, at conception. So for my whole life of almost 53 years, I've been carrying around my dad's grief and it and not really understanding like why I feel this way, which is common. When
Yeah.
inherited emotions happen, you're like, I feel this way, but I don't know why. Well, the reason is it wasn't ever yours to have, but your soul made an agreement to cart this family emotion, carry on this emotional baggage that's just not necessary. And the cool thing is, I am working with your subconscious mind. So your subconscious
Hmm.
mind is going 24/7. It never takes a break. Its job is to keep you alive, its job is to keep you safe. So it's almost like your subconscious is your guard dog, and it wants
Right.
always, making sure your heart beats, that you're breathing, that you're safe, that, lions aren't going to eat you. And that's all going on in the background. So a lot of this we're not even conscious of. So I tap into your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind, I'm just this vessel that allows your subconscious mind to talk, bring up the emotion, figure out when it imprinted on you, and release it. And basically what I've experienced in doing this work for
Yeah.
myself
Yeah.
several others over the last 4 months, is that emotion wants to be heard. It wants to get
Yeah.
its day in court, for lack of a better way to explain
Mhm.
it. It wants you to understand where it came from, but your subconscious mind is ready to let go of this. So we only release what your subconscious mind tells us that you're ready to let go of. And then we release
Mm.
it. We can release up to 10 emotions per session,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And again, these emotions get released the minute I run the magnet, and each one gets released separately. So we basically go through this process, identifying the emotion, identifying it when it imprinted on you, getting its permission to be released, release it by running the magnet, and then we move on to the next session or the next emotion. So, for instance, if I was working with Megan,
Hmm.
I tap into your energy, basically act as a proxy for you. I do all my sessions by phone.
Yeah.
And I would start out the session by saying, is there a trapped emotion that we can release for Megan today? And I
Yes.
have a chart and we identify it as quickly as possible. And
Hmm.
then we identify the time frame in your life, get permission to release it, and then ask, is there another trapped emotion that we can release for Megan today? And often the client, when I start the session, I'll ask, like, what is it you want to work on today? And sometimes it's
Right.
related to, you know, relationships in your life. Sometimes it's related to your work. Sometimes it's related to a lot of women I work with, weight gain. Why can't I get rid of this weight? All of these things are the result of trapped emotions. And those trapped emotions at some point were keeping us safe. And now the person is it's not it's being more harmful than helpful, and so now the person is ready to let it go.
So what do you tip? How does the time frame? And we've worked together, and I have to say that my experience of emotional coding, having worked with you, is that the shift in my personal experience is very subtle, and I want to say slow, but not necessarily. But it's like, and the best way I can describe it is like it's like a subconscious frequency shift, where it's like all of a sudden, I think we were, I think we were working on something. Um, oh, I can't remember what, but I remember it was like, dealing with harmful energies coming at me. Well, I can't remember what the motion particularly was, but having like harsh things being said or directed my way at me, where I would really take them on, and take in the wound.
Mm-hmm.
And after we worked together, I feel like I was like, no, you're not going to speak to me that way. Like all of a sudden, I was like, yeah, no, I'm done. Like there was just this subtle shift. And it's not like it didn't hurt still or it didn't affect me still, but like how I was standing in my frame started to shift and has been shifting, and when we work together, it kind of gets reinforced the second time. So my question is like, when people come to you and like, is there a time frame that you notice where things start to really manifest, the shifts start to manifest within them?
So just like a snowflake, each one of us is totally unique, and this whole experience is very specific to the person. So there is no, if we clear grief, it takes this much time. Um, and how these emotions settle in our bodies are also very unique. Your experience in this lifetime is very different than my experience in this lifetime. What
Sure.
bothers me may not bother you, and vice versa. But I think what you're saying is exactly true. This is like an energy shift, a vibrational shift. I think for most people, I mean, most people don't walk around just wanting to feel miserable. And even if we
Nobody
did,
does. Yeah.
yeah, and even if we did, we aren't usually telling our friends and family
That.
the bad stuff. We live in the society where we post all the happy things on Facebook or wherever, or Instagram, and people
Right.
think our life is perfect.
Yeah.
And
We live
that's
in the edited highlight reel. Yeah.
yep, yep. So, but deep down, like in our soul, we all are suffering. We all have traumas that are
We have
unresolved.
lessons. Yeah. We have lessons our soul requested to learn.
Yes.
Right. Like our souls come in specific. Actually, I heard this. I'm going to share this with you. Um, my son said to me this morning over breakfast, he goes, Mom, do you know that there's such a thing as somebody who can't feel any pain? Like that's a thing, like a disease or something, whatever. And I said, yeah, yeah, I guess I've heard of that. And he said, but do you know that they usually don't live very long? And I was like, I just thought of it in a soul context. And then he explained that because, they don't have a threshold for pain. So they aren't, they usually take it too far or are unaware of, you know, um, their physical reality, and that costs them, or I don't know specifically what it is, but I thought of it in terms of the soul. And the soul comes into this world specifically wanting to know suffering and pain. Like this is like the training ground for suffering and pain. But on the other side of suffering and pain is lessons, right? It sounds to me like what emotional coding is and what you're doing is like once those lessons have been learned, once the soul has, acquired them, then they no longer need to stick in the physical body. And they can be sticky. So like they need to go on, they need to be released. And this is like an alternate way to help release uh like basically, when you like a kid has done all the tests and done all the work and the homework, they pass the test, but they still have a ton of like papers from the quizzes leading up to the big test, and they're all just like
Correct.
stuffed. Yeah, they're just like stuffed in their desk. It's like the test is over. Throw away the papers. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right, right. Absolutely. That is very true. But what often happens is, I'm just going to use an example. Let's say at age 2,
Mm-hmm.
I experience abandonment,
Yeah.
and it gets trapped.
Yeah.
And then every time I experience something that feels like that, I just heap on another layer of feeling abandoned. And if I don't
Yes.
ever resolve that emotion from age 2,
Yep.
it's like a snowball. It just keeps
Yeah.
growing and growing and growing. And so each
Yeah.
time I feel similar, it's just another heaping scoop of abandonment. And as a almost 53-year-old woman, I was still suffering with things that literally happened back to age 2, which I don't want to
Yeah.
carry that stuff with me anymore. So it was time to say goodbye to that stuff. But I want to tell you a quick story about
Yeah.
just talking about your son and a kid. So in the book, they talk about this woman who was getting certified. And so this work is so exciting. And I just know from my own experience, like you want to share it with everybody, tell all your friends, tell all your family, you got to
Yeah.
try it. It's amazing. So this mother is, talking incessantly about emotion coding and clearing. And her little 8-year-old son, the kids they hear everything we say. So the little boy is 8 and he's hearing all of this, um, and kind of back to the subconscious mind. Like he's not intentionally like eavesdropping on his mom, but his subconscious mind is just taking all of this in. So he goes to the swimming pool, and his friend who's 8 as well is terrified of water. Like
Yeah.
the boy doesn't know that basically the mom has to like coax him to take baths. Like he really is terrified of water. Well, the little 8-year-old boy, in his own 8-year-old way, does this emotional clearing with his friend who's terrified of water to convince him to go into the swimming pool so they can like play and go swimming together. So
Yeah.
he does the clearing with the little boy again, and it doesn't really matter in the way we do it. It's all
Right.
intention. It's just,
Yeah.
it's energy, which is why I can do this work. This is why I can work with Megan from Denver when she's in Chicago. Um,
Right.
so this little boy does the clearing on his friend. Neither one of them know that it's been done. The other little boy goes in the pool, has a grand time. The mom comes to the pool to pick him up and is just flabbergasted, takes the boys home, tells the mom, like, this is amazing. My kid is terrified of water, blah, 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 blah. He almost drowned when he was, a little boy. And I don't know what your kid did, but to get him to going to a swimming pool is amazing. And so, really, the long and short is anybody can do this work. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just so healing. It's like going in and finding the underlying root cause of why somebody is fearful or angry or
Yeah.
and basically these are all like shadow emotions. So they're not really,
Yeah.
these are the things we're trying to avoid. So these are the things that we don't see on a daily basis. We don't really want to look at.
Well, they're
But
not
this
socially like, you know, welcomed or accepted. Well, maybe
correct.
they are, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're not braggable
true.
emotions.
So we're giving the emotion the voice to say, here I am, this is what happened. We're ready to let this go, release, move on, do the next one, the next one, the next one. And really, what this is doing, it's getting us back to the core of our soul and who we really are created to be. We're not created to be these people that are just carrying around bags and bags and bags of, you know, yucky emotions.
Mm-hmm.
We're really meant to live more in the light. And kind of back to your point, too, when we agree to come onto this planet, we agree to the whole spectrum of emotions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If life was always good, A, we would never grow. B, we would never have any perspective on how good is. On the other hand, if we were just stuck
Mm-hmm.
in bad all the time,
Mm-hmm.
we'd probably be like that kid or that person your son was talking about, of just sort of being risk takers and
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know, giving up on life maybe because it just feels so yucky. So, I think the hard emotions definitely
Yeah.
help us grow and as you said, learn the lessons that we came here to learn. But we don't need to repeat in my case, abandonment over 53
Right.
years. It's time to let that go. And so
Right. And I'm
very
thinking,
free.
looking at that kid's desk stuffed with all the quizzes leading up to the big test. And then, it's like, if we don't clear them, we're not making space for um, the next lesson or whatever. And we're not actually able to have a clear perspective on it because it's cluttered with all this previous junk that we
Very
should have moved on from or have moved on from, but haven't cleared.
absolutely. So another thing that we work on in doing this work is often we'll use these negative emotions as what is called a heart wall. And
Mm,
so the average adult has 25 trapped emotions in their heart wall. And so
mm,
the heart wall is the way we really protect ourselves from getting hurt. And so,
yeah.
we're just like layering bricks of negative, hard emotions, I guess is the better way to put it, layering, layering, layering to insulate us from letting anybody in to hurt us. But it also insulates us from letting the love that we have out. Like there's no like flow. And so as we peel off these heart wall emotions, we're getting back to our true self of, every one of us, our purpose on this planet is to love and be loved. And when we have these like deep heart walls or any heart wall, we're holding ourselves back from our sole purpose of loving and being loved. So that is some other amazing work that we can do in emotion code. Um, One other thing I want to say, so this is funny. I am not an animal person, mostly because of my lung issues. I've had asthma and allergies my whole life, and so I've never really owned a pet. But I also, so doing this work, it's required to do some work with animals. So I have done clearings on cats and dogs, and obviously these dogs and cats are owned by um, friends of mine. But it's been really interesting in doing that work. It's helped me overcome fears that I've had about animals, but it also been really interesting connecting with animals who obviously don't speak English, but they understand the intention behind what is being done. And one example I'll give, a friend of mine has a German Shepherd, and this dog is the most amazing dog, but this dog had witnessed a domestic violence incident several years ago. And when we did the clearing on the dog, this poor dog had been holding on to a whole bunch of grief and shame about not protecting her owner. And so we were able to clear that. And it
Huh.
was so interesting because when I do this work, it's almost like a map, like a treasure map, trying to find,
Yeah.
it's like putting together a puzzle, actually, like trying to figure out
Yeah.
why the person is struggling in an area of their life, or even for me, like health issues. And then finally getting to the core of it. And it's like, oh, here's the missing piece. But it's so interesting how much sense it makes to the person that I'm working with. And so with the animals, the person being the owner of the animal, it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And so when we decode the why I've been feeling this way for so long, it's like here's the magic key to letting that go and living free of trapped emotions that have been haunting us and plaguing us for a good portion of our life. So it's super amazing work. The other thing is the sessions are about 30 minutes. So it goes really fast. And we don't spend a lot of
Yeah.
time digging like to the nth degree about what happened. Usually, and I'll just give you an example. Um, let's say we land on insecurity, and I'll ask, okay, when did this happen? And then let's say we key in on this happened at age 21. Then I ask the client, um, like, what comes to mind, or what immediately pops out to you about age 21? And literally, it rolls off their tongue. This might be something they haven't thought about in decades. And through the muscle testing, we get the hit that, yes, this is what it is. And again, it always just makes sense. So, one of the things I want to talk about too today is, and anybody can do this. So, muscle testing, one of the easiest way to do muscle testing is called the sway test. And so you stand up tall, straight, and you can do this with anything. But um, if the answer is true for you, you'll slightly sway forward, like leaning into something. If the answer is false or not for your highest and best good, you're going to lean slightly backwards. And so you can actually use that sway test to help you find your own answers as well. So it's pretty remarkable how smart your subconscious mind is, and ultimately, as much as it wants to keep you safe and keep you alive, it also wants to keep you happy and healthy and growing and moving forward and letting go of stuff that no longer serves you. So this work is really amazing. It's fast. It's like we identify, we release it, we move on to the next one. And we can get rid of a whole bunch of stuff that I've spent hours and hours and hours and hours, probably months in therapist offices trying to let go of this stuff. And like I
Release.
said
Yeah.
before at the beginning, it's like there's always these like little tentacles of like leftover remnants that just have plagued me. And this is almost like unplugging them from the wall. Like they just don't have an emotional charge anymore, which is phenomenal. So my story is still my story. The pain I've been
Yeah.
through is still my pain, but it doesn't have that emotional trigger that it has had for all these years. It's like, yeah, that happened. It just is not like running my life anymore. So it has been so freeing for me. And then one other story I want to tell you is when I did that work of releasing my dad's grief, again, it wasn't mine, so I can't go in and find out like the whys or the what's behind it, but I just release it. And so when you're releasing inherited emotions, you release it back to the person who it started with, all the way through everyone who's been impacted by it, all the way through your children. I have a granddaughter. It releases it all the way through all the generations that have experienced it. And so I didn't tell my dad I was doing this work. I didn't even know this was going to come up. I didn't tell my son that I was doing this work. Anywho, within less than a few days of doing this work back in January, my dad, who I never talked to on a regular basis, started calling me out of the blue and checking on me and how are you doing? And it was just a little creepy in a good way. Like, what is going on here? And then my son, my granddaughter was homesick for a week and then school closed because of snow days. So she was home for like 10 days. And, um, normally she goes to daycare and normally that long of time at home with my son, they'd both be pulling their hair out. He was sending me pictures of them going out sledding. And I'm like, what on earth is happening? So I can see the energetic shift in me. All of my relationships are improving. In my dad, he's making a huge effort to have a relationship with me. And in my son, in his relationship with my granddaughter, which just all of it warms my heart so much. So, um, my goal is just to help kind of be the the vessel to help as many people as I can to heal and be free of hard emotions and just live the lives they are created to live.
I love that. Um, yeah, and what you're saying, because what I know of you, you're wickedly, like I said earlier, intuitive, like a very sharp with your intuition. But also, and I feel like this turns up in this type of work, is very a big fan of practicality and efficiency, which
Yeah.
this work seems to be. It's very practical and it's very efficient, which are, by the way, wonderful things in a very hustle and bustle life. Lifestyle that we all live now. But I do have a question. Um, One question for you on this is like, how does your intuition and your connection to it play a role in this work, and therefore kind of in your life as well?
Yes. Yes, and or yes, but feel like I I I literally feel like I connect with my higher power when I start the session, but I almost feel like a shell. Like I just
Yeah, like a vessel, kind of.
yeah, and I just let the information come through. I don't have any control over what happens. I'm not there are times when like if I know somebody specific and I know a little bit of their story,
Yeah,
get a hit that, oh, it's related to this relationship or this incident.
right.
But I often, and I'll just give you an example. Last night I was doing a session and I did get that hit that I thought it was related to a specific relationship. And I said to
Mm-hmm.
the person, I'm getting a hit, but I want to know what comes up for you. And anyway, so I let it's their work, it's not my work. So
Of course.
they come up with their answers. I am just kind of the mouthpiece for, and I always check in to make sure that what we're doing is resonating with the person. And mostly it's like blowing their socks off as it blows my
Right.
socks off.
Right.
Um, and a lot of people I work with, either I like, even if I know them, I don't know their whole story. Again, back to the like, we only show people what we want them to see. So
Yeah.
when somebody's like, oh, that was when I was 18 and had an abortion or whatever, I would have
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
ever that part of their story. So to be able to like pinpoint that that's what it was is just literally mind blowing for them and me. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't really know in reality how much my intuition has a bearing on this. It really is
Mm-hmm.
giving a piece to the other person's subconscious mind to let this.
Well, I feel like you already answered it. I mean, like, in terms of, like, you're letting your intuition helps kind of uh guard the rails a bit if needed, like you used the example of the person, getting an understanding of, possibly this relationship or whatever might be at play, right? So, like, the reins, all of a sudden your intuition takes the reins and says, what if we steer it this way? You know what I mean? But
I
that
do
seems
think
like
I do think that's
intuition is different than opinion too, just meaning, like, intuition to me is like, how does the universal spirit work with your individual soul through this
I,
work?
I do think that's true. I do think it's funny that I will be coached by spirit to ask the right question. Um,
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I think things will kind of sometimes for me come out of left field
Right.
and be like hit the target for the person. And so I do think spirit is helping me in that way for sure. And I think this is all guided by spirit. So, I think
Right.
spirit comes in and works with, it's like the three of us solving the puzzle of the person and what's been haunting them for a long time and what they're ready to let go of. And your subconscious mind is only going to let go of what you're ready to let go of. So we're not going to ever get to a place of, if
Yeah.
is still protecting you, you might still need that thing to keep you
Right.
safe. And so, it's funny how the sessions go. It's literally like we're have a treasure map and almost like a scavenger hunt, that we're on the scavenger hunt and what comes up is totally out of my control and we just follow it. And, you know, every time I ask, is there another trapped emotion we can release regarding this, that, or the other? When we get to the place where that person's subconscious mind is done, the answer is no, we don't have any more any more trapped emotions that we can release. And then we wrap up the
Mm-hmm.
session out how much time the person needs to process. Usually I can see a theme in what was released. And so often
Yeah.
the person and I will come up with a mantra for them to use during the processing time. Because like I said, we clear the emotions in the moment of the session, but the body needs some time to like recalibrate and like
Yeah.
settle the new you and let everything kind of shake out. And so I think it's really
Yeah.
important to have whatever that theme is, which is usually like a negative belief about yourself, to kind of reiterate whether it's, the underlying theme is like, I am loved, I am worthy, I am my own hero, I am. respected, so I usually try to like wrap things up with something for the person to like really focus on for that processing period.
Yeah.
What I
Like
want to say,
like mental calisthenics post
yeah, yeah,
post surgery.
absolutely. Yeah, here's your homework.
Right.
The thing I want to say about this is our mind, it can figure out, do the math to find out how much money is in the bank or figure out like, oh yeah, I need to get this from the grocery store. But our minds, like our brain, is terrible in figuring out emotions, how to handle them, yada, yada, yada. So this is very much heart work. So we're not ever
Yes.
going to the brain for the answer. We're always going
No.
to the soul, the heart, the subconscious mind.
Yeah, I always say like I'm much better when I go like work from my emotions, which is a heart-centered thing, versus my head. If I go from my head, like I'm screwed. Like there's if my head is in control, like all it's just that's not where my intelligence lies. It lies in my heart, my emotions, And the soul
You,
work that comes before and after.
yeah, you and everyone else on this planet. So I
Yeah.
always tell people like when you feel like you're being in your head, like if I ask you what resonates, if we land on, this trapped emotion happened when you were 16, and I say, what happened, like what's your immediate reaction to 16? If
Mhm.
you start mulling it over in your head about, well, this,
You
that, and
think
the
too
other, you're
much.
in the
Yeah.
wrong space. So,
Exactly.
uh,
Exactly.
but it's very interesting work, and I feel like it has sped up my healing
Mm,
by leaps and bounds.
that's wonderful. So Laura will be actually joining us on our full moon monthly meetup, the C3, which stands for Create, Connect Consciously. Laura is going to join us and give another little talk on emotional coding, what it is, how it works, and then do a mini session with us. So if you're interested in joining that, I'm offering a drop-in price, is the same as our monthly price, so it's discounted. And that information can all be found on my website, magnetizeyourlight.com, underneath the community tab. And Laura, you're amazing. I love you.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun. You're my first
Yeah,
podcast ever, so thank you. And
you're
I just
welcome.
out
It's
and I
really interesting work, and it's like of the modern age. It's like spiritualism for and energy healing for the girl on the go.
absolutely, absolutely, yep. So thank you for sharing me and this with the world. I so appreciate you, Megan.
Yes, and you too. And keep doing all the things you do because you have such a um magical connection to your intuition that makes you just a beautiful vessel for others' healing.
Thank you. Thank you,
You're
friend.
welcome. That is this week's intuitive message and hopefully beautiful resource for you. If not, if you didn't know about emotional coding before, maybe it's just a new thing to explore along your journey. If you would like to reach Laura and have your own personalized emotional coding session with her, you can find her at Emotional Freedom with Laura. That's emotional, EMOTIONAL, freedom, FREEDOM, with WITH, Laura spelled LAURA at gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate that you're here. And if you like this episode or this piqued your interest in any way and have questions, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. And subscribe, like, share. That helps me out and hopefully helps others out as well. All right. Hope you're well. Have a great week. Talk to you soon. Big love.